YouTube. What's up, everybody over on Spotify listening? It's the Black Shirt and Ball Cap podcast with the two guys that wear black shirts and ball caps. It's your favorite show. I'm here with Tim Blakaj again, back on the show, three-peating, and we're wearing black t-shirts and ball caps because that's what we do.
Yeah.
And I need to remember to look into the camera. I got my fancy camera, Tim.
Yeah, it looks good. You look great.
Thank you. I'm gonna set you up. We're gonna figure out because you've got one of these. We're gonna figure out how to get it going.
Yeah.
So that we're matching quality. I'm used to looking at the StreamYard screen so I can see you. So that's one thing that I'm gonna have to figure out. Is like how do I look over here so that it looks like I'm looking at the audience and engaging with people, like I'm looking at you, but you're down here. I'm gonna have to figure that out.
I'm gonna have to get used to not looking you in the eyes.
Yeah. You're like, he's not looking at me. But I feel like if I was the viewer watching this would look more like I'm looking at you, right?
Yeah.
Like this looks to me when I'm looking at the screen right here, if I'm looking at you, I'm like not looking at you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I look here. To you, does it look like I'm looking at the screen right now?
Yeah, 100%. We are making eye contact right now.
Okay. All right. Great. And that I will imagine that's what's happening. Well, welcome everybody. We're chit-chatting about movie theaters. This is just something that's been on my mind kind of all year long and just sort of the last few years. And I know that it's something that you definitely think about and talk about, and that most people who are involved in commenting on cinema and movies are aware of and concerned about, is just sort of this increasing trend toward like fewer and fewer movies being released in theaters and it being sort of a novelty for movie. Like I have a monthly subscription where I do the AMC stubs list, which I think is a great way to go see movies in theaters these days. People talk a lot about how the price has gone up significantly, and it has, and it's become more cost prohibitive, but where tickets are like $20 to one movie. But like a lot of subscription deals at movie theaters are like $20 to $25 for the month for unlimited movies, basically. So it's like, well, you could make it so that each movie you go see, if you go see a movie every week, is $5, which is, I think, reasonable. But the thing that's happening is there's not always something great to see. It used to be when I used to have this package that there was at least one thing that I would want to go see every week in the theater. And now it feels like there's like one movie every couple months that's like the movie that everyone's got to go see. And then anything else that's coming out is coming out on streaming, or you just have to like go take a chance on some weird movie that's in the theater because you're like, well, it's already paid for. I'm on the subscription plan. I might as well go see it. What do you think about this whole thing? Do you think that we're just being old crotchety dudes that aren't willing to change with the times, and we just need to accept that this is where things are going, or what?
I mean, it's a little of both, man. I think. Well, I mean, I just recently got the AMC stubs reward or whatever.
Yeah.
Just because it's like I have the Alamo one, and I consistently use it. I've abused it to a point where I'm almost always there. But at this point, it's like I've been going to a lot of local AMCs just in the area, smaller ones, not renovated. There's no like recliner seats. They have like no money to them. The only way these theaters make money is through like, food and all that shit. And I've been using that a lot more lately. So it's super fucking disheartening to see. I mean, especially when it comes to like the way it's like that's the industry now. It's the way it is. It's theaters are I mean, you know what's funny? I don't like the Russo brothers. I don't like when they speak. It bothers me when I hear them say things. But I didn't like when Joe Russo recently said that movie theaters are not a sacred place anymore. And I don't like it. One, because it's him saying it. Two, because he's fucking right. It's not the communal place that it was. If it is, it's for, something that clogs the entire fucking industry. And for everything else that's trying to get by, it just simply isn't. And with everything else, with streaming service taking place and with streaming becoming cable at this point, yeah, it's an entirely different fucking landscape, and it's much more of a novelty thing now than it is, I don't know,
Yeah, but I liked what you said about Joe Russo saying that, where you were like, yeah, but you're the reason why, you're part of the reason why that is, like, because so weird. The Russo brothers have made some of the best movies in the MCU, and like, I think it was really exciting to see what's going to happen when the Russo brothers step outside of Marvel, now that they've sort of arrived as this pair of directing brothers who have made a handful of like really entertaining movies, really high grossing movies that have done really well in movie theaters. And their first two ventures outside of the MCU have been exclusive streaming movies. The first one was Cherry on Apple, and now they've done The Gray Man on Netflix. And I think both were critical bombs. Like, critics did not like those movies.
Yeah.
And I haven't even watched The Gray Man yet, but like,
I did.
And how was it?
It's a movie.
Yeah.
It's a movie with big name actors, and it's on Netflix, and that's all you can really say about it without getting, just enjoy it, man, comments.
Yeah, because again, it's like, if anybody should be releasing their movies in the theaters, it's the Russo brothers. Like, it's people who the people who directed Avengers Endgame, which is the highest grossing film of all time.
Yeah.
So it's like, why are you guys staying out of cinemas? But then you have people like even Martin Scorsese making The Irishman, which The Irishman did play in theaters.
Had a limited run in theaters.
Yeah, had a limited run. But again, it's like,
and then Netflix responded to that with, we're not going to be doing any more vanity projects. So from now on, we're going to solely give $200 million to people who make just, copy paste comedy spy thrillers for our streaming service.
Red Notice, whatever the fuck that Michael Bay movie was.
Yeah.
I can't
Extraction, The Old Guard. Those last two aren't comedies, but like, they're just famous people shooting guns and being like, they have the flash drive. You know what I mean? It's just very.
They have the flash drive.
That's my favorite line in have you seen The Boys season 3?
Yeah.
That first scene when they're in the movie theater watching Dawn of the Seven, and you're just hearing indiscriminate like Avengers dialogue. It's like, we get hold of the flash drive. There's not much time. It's just, that made me laugh so hard because it's 100% kind of like writing.
They got the doodad,
the
MacGuffin. What's the movie? Spider-Man Into the Multiverse, where they just go. It's just the what do they call it? The
doohickey or something,
like thingamajig or something like that. Yeah, they're just like, it doesn't matter. There's always something that we gotta get. True Velocity on YouTube said COVID restrictions had a lot to do with it as well, and that's true. COVID
to do with what in particular? Movies, movie theaters. Yeah,
movie theaters.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I wonder do you think we're still not in a post-COVID world? We're entering another big spike. Do you think if in a year or two we're finally actually able to like crawl from the ashes of this terrible pandemic, do you think that will see a return more? Because I don't know. Like, are there still people out there who are still like, I don't feel comfortable going to the movie theater because of COVID? Probably, right? There's probably still people out. I stopped like a year and a half ago. I was like, I'm going to the movies. I got to go to the movies.
Yeah. I mean, I spent the first, like, after I got vaccinated, I think I spent the majority of May, June, and July exclusively in movie theaters. And there was nothing new out. I was seeing everything. Like, they were replaying Lord of the Rings and all these other types of movies that I never got to even see in movie theaters. So it was definitely a special experience at the time. But yeah, no, I don't think it's ever going to be quite the same. I think that, even before, let's be honest, even before COVID, the only movies that made money, and like movies that made money, I mean movies that made 900 million and above, because anything below 900 million was considered a flop by their studio.
Yeah.
Batman versus Superman even who cares what you think about the movie? It made what, 700 million, 800 million, and people were like, but it didn't make $1 billion. And it's like, it's really?
When they probably they probably spent 300 million on that movie.
Yeah.
Which is probably something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it made profit, but
but that's the thing. It's no longer about making profit. It's about, have you hit this benchmark yet? That's why that's why if you want to talk about like positives for now. I mean, Top Gun Maverick doing as well as it did, even though it is still, a quote unquote legacy sequel and it has Tom Cruise and all that. The fact that like something that is a, sequel to a 30-year-old whatever is that made this much and did it as well commercially and successful and critically is special. But I think that even that is a very rare type of movie to come out.
Yeah, we've had a few goodies this year that have been inspiring, like or making me think maybe this is a good sign. And I know did pretty well. I mean, Everything Everywhere All at Once that you and I have talked about was A24's highest grossing film so far, and A24 has been a company that everybody's been watching for the last 10 years or so. Like that, everything that every time they put something out, it seems to do pretty well. And especially they're really good at having their movies do well against their budget. They usually keep movies in a certain space where they're like between 15 and 30 million dollars to make, and then their movies do pretty well, make 150 million dollars at the box office, and it keeps them in production. But this movie was on the more expensive side for them. It was like a $25 million movie, which still is nothing compared to the Marvel movies and things like that, but it was their highest grossing film. And I think that's hopeful, right? That like even smaller movies like that can do well in the cinema and don't need to go to streaming.
I mean, we talked about that last time. Something as weird as Everything Everywhere All at Once doing well financially is a fucking big plus,
Yeah.
And it's just you hope that maybe that's the thing is I think Everything Everywhere All at Once was a very special cocktail of creativity and being very topical at the time, multiverse and all that stuff. So I think that definitely played a lot into it.
Yep. It's weird, that thing that Joe Russo said about like, oh, the cinema's not a sacred space anymore, and you were like, yeah, it's kind of sad because you sort of agree with. I mean, but that's subjective, right? Because it is for me. I feel like
no, I strictly mean I think the majority of theater goers, because there are people who, and like whenever I talk about, like I do a lot of videos on Instagram and stuff about saying go see more movies, and people always people comment like it's expensive or I'm unable to because I have a kid, and I'm always kind of putting that caveat to the side of being like, I'm clearly not saying to the people who can't afford or who don't have the time, you need to go see more movies. I'm talking to the guy that saw Spider-Man No Way Home 230 times, setting a Guinness World Record. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. That's a good caveat to put on there, that it's like, we're not saying that if you don't have any expendable income that you should spend whatever expendable income you have saving movie theaters. But there are a lot of people with expendable income who I don't know, like, do people genuinely enjoy watching movies more at home? And I guess, hey, maybe if you're a person who has a home theater, who like has a huge house with a giant theater in your basement with theater sound, and you don't have to leave home to have that experience, maybe that is what it is. You prefer that experience. And so maybe there's also this thing, like there's the people who are saying, I can't go to the movies because I can't afford it. And then there's the people who go, I don't go to the movies because I don't have to, because I have a movie theater at my house. So it's both sides of like the economic spectrum.
Yeah.
But I like, for people who are more in the range of like you and I, who could afford, a $20 to $25 monthly subscription to a movie theater just so that they can go to the movie. I'm like, are we just sort of like part of a niche class of film nerds now that are dying out, that are clinging to a dying institution, that like we just value this theater experience? Because I just, for the life of me personally, home is for TV. That's where I watched, and we are in a golden age of television. We have been for a while now. Like, and there's just always at any given time so much good television to watch. And I got a great TV at my house that works great for the TV shows I want to watch. And TV is this sort of medium where I can watch TV while being on my phone. Like I can watch TV while playing a game on my phone. And like I can watch TV while doing the dishes. When I watch a movie, because TV too, it's serialized. It's like I can miss little bits and pieces of an episode here and there and still get the gist of what's going on throughout this 14-hour arc that's happening with these characters that I'm watching. But in a movie where it's like the whole thing's going to take place beginning, middle, and end in 2 hours, and every piece of it has been judiciously combed over by the editing team to be like, what is the most necessary stuff here for this? I want to take, and it's just this for a lot of movies. It's like, this is all that exists of this IP. It's just this with Everything Everywhere All at Once. There's most likely not going to be a sequel to that movie. I hope there's not going to be a sequel to that movie. It's just this. This is the only thing that exists in this universe. This is the only story that exists with these characters. I want to be in a dark room with my phone off, invested in that story for 2 hours. I want I want to be transported. I want to be taken into that universe, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. It's. I remember when I was, oh God, this is awful. When I was in high school, a girl that I was interested in asked me what I liked to do, and I said I liked going to the movie theater. She was like, "What's the matter? Why?" I think it was strictly just not even surrounding anything about like a stigma against going to the movies. It was strictly just like you like going to a movie theater, and I was like, "Yeah, you don't like sitting in a giant room with a giant screen watching." Something like it's just the most fun shit. I mean, I've been going to the movie since I was very little. I would beg my parents. My mom always took me. My dad never would, and then my uncle would bring me all the time, and it was just so much fun. It was an event, and before events, you had like we're chained to streaming to cinematic universes. It was like I had an uncle who would buy 2 rows of IMAX seats for everyone in the family to go, and we would see. I remember seeing Avatar in theaters at that time, and that was insane at the time. 2009 3D, what a big deal. And he was like, "Yeah, dude, this is crazy. We're gonna get a bunch of food, then we're gonna go to a movie theater, and we're gonna just all sit and watch, something crazy." And we stopped doing that fairly recently. I mean, just before the pandemic really kicked off, but. That was the shit. And then there was a good portion like throughout college where I was going to movies strictly alone. I didn't like going with people. People talk too much. I didn't like sitting next to someone who I was with, and I could like see out of the corner of my eye that they're not paying attention. It's my problem 100%, but it 100% impacted my experience. So I was strictly going alone. But now I'm at a point where I asked like so many different people the other day, "Hey, I got an extra ticket to Nope. Do you want to go with me?" I just went and I just bought 2 tickets. I was like, maybe I'll get someone to come with me. There has to be somebody that wants to go and see a movie. You know what I mean? And multiple people in my life, friends and family, were like, I'm doing something, or
they were
I'm
like,
not really
nope.
feeling it. Basically, they just nope instantly. And then I ended up asking my dad, and I was like, I'd never go to the movies with this guy. He ended up coming out of nowhere. And I just want to go with someone to talk about it now. Like, there's nothing more depressing to me than like I was going to a theater all the way downtown, and then after a movie getting out of the theater and being like, all right, well, now I got to go sit on the train for an hour and a half and not really get to talk to someone about the movie I just watched. You know what I mean? It's just
I watch a lot of movies by myself too, and it's because I just like I do it a lot on a whim. Like I'm like, oh, what am I gonna do tonight? And I'm like, let's see what's playing. I'll go see a movie, and then I just like I don't know. I'm too lazy to reach out to someone and be like, "Do you want to go see this with me?" and like coordinate it and figure out which theater we're going to. And then I have to. There's all this other stuff too of like some of my friends like to sit in different areas than I like to sit. They're like, I like to sit here. I'm like, I don't like sitting there. I like sitting over here, And it's also like, why do we need to sit by each other? We don't need to sit by each other. I just want to talk to you after. I want to talk to you before. I don't need to be sitting next to you during it. I just, but I know exactly what you're talking about. I laughed when you talked about like, I've had experiences with friends where I'm like, I can't go watch a movie with you because I had a friend who all the time, he wouldn't turn his phone off, and he would in the middle of a movie have his phone in his shirt pocket, and he would just check it to see like what time it was and I told him after a movie one time, I was like, I'm not going to go to the movies with you anymore. And he was like, why? And I go, I said at every emotional climactic part of that movie, I remember what movie it was. We went and saw A Star Is Born, and at every like major emotional climactic part of the movie, he took his phone out and like checked his phone. I was like, it was the scene when Bradley Cooper is about to end his life in the garage and you pulled your phone out and started texting, and I was like, I wanted to punch you in the face.
See, I think that is there's something about like I don't want to be I know it's 100%. Now this is where I'm going to be 100% elitist. It's like a specific kind of person looks at their phone in a movie theater and doesn't consider what's on screen as important as what's on their phone. It's just a fact. You know what I mean? And it's like, those are the people that need that can, you know what, fine, stay home and watch on streaming. You know what I mean? But then it's the majority of the time running something like my page as often as for as long as I have. It's those people who are also going, oh my God, nothing's original these days. Everything's a sequel. Everything's a reboot. Everything's this and that. And it's like, well, I saw, Swiss Army Man in theaters with you, and you weren't paying attention at all. And they go, Swiss Army Man. I'm like, yeah, the people who just directed Everything Everywhere All at Once. They're like, oh yeah. I'm like, oh well, there you go. You know what I mean? It's there's a clear impasse that is just not going to be passed by some people, I think.
Yep. And I again, like, that's fine. I guess it's different strokes for different folks. And like you said earlier, like, it's my problem.
Yeah.
Like,
no, it's 100% my it's a tick of something of mine that I have to get over. It's childish of me.
Yeah. Somebody, Kitty on YouTube did just say, never check your phone in a movie theater. Turn that thing off entirely. I agree. I just think etiquette wise, even if you're the kind of person who just like, I have a hard time focusing, then maybe you're right, Tim, that like that person, maybe just watching movies at home is for you. If you can't agree to turn your phone off, like the fact that it's just become a huge part of going to the movies, that every movie theater everywhere has to make several announcements to be like, please, we're serious. We're being serious. Turn your phones off. And just because we know that people won't, we know, and it's the same way with live theater. And when it happens in live theater, when I go see live theater, and it always happens, it's like they can hear you. Yeah. They can hear you. They're right there. They're not separated by a screen. They're invested in an emotional moment, and they can hear you right now. They can hear your phone.
That's so distressing just thinking about that. Ugh.
And so disrespectful. But I think it's the same in a movie though, because people, I think what's cool about a movie to me, a movie theater and going to see live theater too, is like what happens to a group of people when they're all experiencing a story at the same time like that, in that it's almost like a sensory deprivation tank that we're all in. We're in the, like, turn off all the lights, make it so that the only thing, the biggest, brightest thing in the room is this thing that we're all facing toward, and hearing collective gasps, hearing, I mean, going back to the Russos, man, like I saw Endgame 3 times in the theater because I knew that was one of those movies that just wasn't going to hit the same at home. It just, the effect that it had in the movie theater, especially the first time I saw it, was like, I've never really had an experience like that where I was totally okay with everything they were doing, all the fan service, because it was the culmination of all of this stuff that I had invested a lot of time and energy and money into. And, to have all of the fans all clicking on the same beats, all of us laughing at the same time, all of us cheering at the same time, and then to hear the air, to feel the air get sucked out of the room and have us all come to a place where you can hear sniffles around the room and everybody's crying at the same time. And you're going, I can't believe I'm crying at this movie right now. I can't believe I care this much about this character. And Robert Downey Jr. has done such a fucking good job of building this character and making him 3-dimensional. And I'm here with all of these people in this, where 2 seconds ago we were cheering about Captain America grabbing Mjolnir. We're all right now crying together in this space. I think that's sacred. I think that is,
well,
there's so few spaces where I can have that experience.
Imagine, well, so then, like, imagine having that experience and then seeing the director of that movie be like, no, it's elitist to say that it's sacred. It's like, the fucker. So many people cheered, cried, screamed during the movies that made you the directors of the highest grossing movies of all time. But because Netflix can throw you an easy 200 million now, you're like, nah, it's streaming. That's where it's at. But to do it, and you know what's funny is he's not wrong. It's the fact that it's him saying it.
Right.
If truly anyone else, I follow Sean Baker, director Sean Baker.
Yeah, I love Sean Baker.
Yeah, I follow him on Instagram, and I saw the way I heard what Russo had said was he posted about it in his story, and he said like, oh, well, I was going to see The Gray Man, and I was literally I'm walking in to see The Gray Man in theaters right now, and then he saw that, which isn't that hilarious? Because Netflix has some theaters around the country that they show their movies in. Even in New York, they have the Paris Theater in Midtown that shows exclusively Netflix movies. Which, funny enough, if this isn't a fucking metaphor for now, it's the oldest theater in New York City, and it went bankrupt, and then Netflix bought it and was like, "You're gonna play only our movies now." Isn't that fucking? Isn't that like what the Pilgrims did to the Native Americans? Isn't that just fucking awful to think about? But
yeah, I really don't want that either. I really don't want a model where, because that used to be the thing too, where studios would like have contracts with certain theaters and be like, you're going to prioritize our film. You're going, and I don't want that either. I also want to make sure that we're not just talking about movie theater movies as like big event movies, because there are big event movies where, I mean, Avatar's the same way. You talked about Avatar earlier. Like Avatar was another movie that I saw 3 times in theaters because I knew it was never going to hit the same at home. And it doesn't.
Never.
It doesn't hit the same at home. And I know that I'm going to go see Shape of Water or Way of Water in theaters because that's just what that movie's made for. It's made to be seen in theaters. It just doesn't have the same appeal at home unless you're a person with a home theater. Like it is meant to be seen on a giant tapestry. That's what the movie, the event of the movie is the effects, is the work that the digital effects artists have put into it. So that's what you're really there to see. And you want to see it on the biggest tapestry you can possibly see it on. And like not just the VFX, but like the sound editing, like that's what those movies are about. But I want to make sure that we're not just saying that like movie theaters are best for big movies, big event movies, because I also am like, I'm a big believer again, because the format is, it's a one-time thing. It's an hour and a half to 2 hours long, sometimes a little bit longer. For like small movies, for small indie movies, I'm like, I would rather see this in theaters. I would rather watch this. When I watched the Way of the Dog at home, I was like, I wish I would have seen this in theaters. Yeah, because it's such a, is that what it is? The Power of the Dog. Power of the Dog. Yeah. Power of the Dog. I was thinking, I'm too easily distracted at home, and this movie requires my attention. Yeah. This movie is requiring that I get lost in the meditative landscapes that are being presented to me, and like the pace of it. I should be really invested in this, and I should be really focused on this, and I can't do that at home. I mean, I'm a person who has a hard time focusing as it is. That's another thing I love about the theater, is that it sort of takes away all of my distractions. I'm very present in there, you know?
Well, I was lucky enough to see The Power of the Dog in theaters at the Paris Theater, and Jane Campion did a Q&A afterwards, which was with a cinematographer. I can't believe I forgot her name. She was nominated, but it's 100% the type of movie that I'm. There are movies that don't necessarily gross $900 million, $1 billion that you're like, I'm so glad I saw this in a movie theater. Another example. Goran Stilevsky's "You Won't Be Alone." It's a Macedonian, like witch coming of age type movie that I was lucky enough to speak with the director and the cinematographer earlier this year. But that's a movie that me and one other dude in the theater, I saw it at the Alamo, and I walked out, and the experience of seeing it in a dark room, like the main character starts out in a cave and then she walks out into the outside world, and she's never seen the outside world before. And then seeing that movie in the dark room of a theater, and then going outside in like Lower Manhattan, right next to the Freedom Tower, and walking around. And I was saying at the time, like, it's very strange. It's very surreal to see a movie about human experience and then walking out into, the world after seeing that movie and thinking about like, oh yeah, that movie has just made life better. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think there are so many movies that are like that go under the radar that you don't fucking think about. I saw someone bring up Where the Crawdads Sing. I saw that literally over the last week, and it's a fantastic movie, but it's based on, it's a book adaptation, and the theater I was in was completely empty. And I mean, for fuck's sake, Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. I was the only one seeing that in theaters, and it was a Friday night. And it's Steven Spielberg, and it's West Side Story. It's West Side Story. It's the conditions couldn't be more, and he had a budget of over $100 million, which is in the mid range of more expensive movies. But like, it's not a conspiracy to say that like a very specific set of movies have people going to theaters and the majority don't. The same way the majority of people watch at home. I've been really high on Marcel right now, Marcel the Shell. Yeah, I saw that yesterday. What'd you think? I fucking loved it. I wanted to see it before I spoke with you, and it's phenomenal. Yeah. And the fact that it got made, I mean, even if it didn't have the history that it has of 10 years ago or something, I think a short came out or something like that. It's it's insane that it got made.
What do you think they made that movie for? $5 million? Like
I would say even less, probably.
less. Yeah, probably.
I mean, maybe a little. I mean, maybe for bringing in what's his who's the interviewer? Maybe they had to pay them a chunk, but you know,
or Isabella Rossellini, like paying.
Yeah.
But
that's like, you know, I mean, it's phenomenal, and it's one of those movies that I can walk out of a $200 million movie that makes a shit ton of money and not feeling anything, like I've done many times in the last specifically 2 years, and then you walk out of something like that, or you know, Petite Maman is Celine. I forgot her last name. She also did Portrait of a Lady on Fire. It's phenomenal, and it's like an hour and a half. It's a short, sweet 90 minutes. And you leave with like an emotional punch in your heart. And
sometimes movies like that, like Marcel, if they're viewed at home, it can be easy to overlook them. It can be easy to sort of just go like, oh, that was cute. Or like that. You know, I think like I remember watching the movie Boyhood at home. I had already seen it in the theater, but I watched it at home with my mom, and she hadn't seen it yet. And it's just the style of movies that Richard Linklater likes to make. They're best taken in a space where you can really lose yourself in the world that he's creating, because they're so realistic and slice of life and fly on the wall. And I think viewed at home, this sort of rambling story of just like the 12 years in this kid's life. And I think people are, I also narratively, that movie is like, people are conditioned to think that one thing is going to lead to the next, and that one event from when he was 10 is going to come back when he's 15 and somehow define his character later. But that's not how real life works. And that movie is more about how real life works. But it's a movie where I'm so glad I saw it in theaters, because I think that movie is a big event movie that is 12 years of a filmmaker's life, of those actors' lives, 12 years of investment of the crew and everybody who spent the time, that like has all come together in this moment to be like, here it is. We spent the last 12 years every year coming together to shoot part of this movie. And here it is. Here's the culmination. And it's this amazing project. And I think you've got to give it the attention that it deserves. And I can't personally, I know I can't do that at home. And I think sometimes smaller movies like that, even people think, oh, that's probably one that you can save for home.
Yeah.
No, I think that even, especially smaller movies, like, you're going to have an easier time losing yourself in the emotional journey that the filmmaker wants you to go on if you experience it in the theater. And Marcel is definitely that way. Marcel is a movie where I'm like, if you watch that at home, it might have the feeling of like a long YouTube video where you're just sort of like, oh, this is cute, and I'm kind of over it 20 or 30 minutes into it. But going and experiencing it as a piece of cinema at a movie theater, going and experiencing it on this large thing, and really getting the sense of scale of like the way that they make that house feel like the size of a country, the way that they make, largely the movie takes place in one place, in one set, and they have air like it's a giant tapestry because Marcel is so small, and they make it feel so expansive and big, and seeing it on a big screen and getting that sense of like, you know, how size can make you feel small. I just talked about this on my podcast on my last episode. I talked about the James Webb Space Telescope photos and how so many people were seeing those and going, oh, it makes me feel so small and so insignificant. And I was like, I don't think that that's the takeaway you should get from it. I think that you should get from it that your size is irrelevant, that your size doesn't matter, that like we are on a sliding scale of things and how much mass they take up in space. And we don't know if we're in the middle of that scale or somewhere near the end of that scale, or like things get so small going down. They get just as small going down as they do get big going out. Like, so we're just somewhere along this infinite sliding scale of how much mass you take up. And when you realize how infinitely big it is in both directions, you realize it doesn't really matter where I land on that scale, because I could be the size of Jupiter and Jupiter is still imperceivably small compared to like, it doesn't matter. And so
relatively, everything's pretty fucking small.
So that scene when Marcel goes out of the house for the first time, I think is so beautiful. When he's just like realizing for the first time, like, oh, I thought that the world was smaller than this. And he's realizing that this isn't the world. This is one small part of the world that like, I thought that was so beautiful. And also just showing that like, it doesn't matter, Marcel, like your world is the size relative to you. And it's about you and the people that you love and the relationships that you have. I don't know. That's a film and a story and a form of storytelling that's rare to see on a big screen. And I think it's just as worthwhile of going and spending an hour and a half, 2 hours as anything else, as Tom Cruise flying F-18s, you know, like.
Absolutely. And that's, you know, I think that's just unfortunately where the divide is. I think most people would rather either, you know, see it at home or not see it at all. A lot of the things that, you know, I mean, they're the movie theater movies that people love to talk about. And you know what I talk about is like Robert Eggers made a movie theater movie, but made it his own way, and it still didn't do well. You know what I mean? Like The Northman is phenomenal. I have it on Blu-ray. I saw it in theater 3 times. And then after, you know, 4 weeks, it had the mandatory, like, all right, we're going to put it on video on demand now. And then it did excellent on video on demand, which is great. You know, it's nice to know that those numbers can be pulled like that. But then you think about its theatrical release, and you know, you think about Robert Eggers was like, oh, dude, this is the amount of work that went into a movie like that, and the amount of compromise that he made is, you know, it's disappointing to think about, especially considering that is the kind of like The Lighthouse, The Witch, very slow, very heavy, you know, kinds of movies that, you know, you can still see in theaters and have a good time if you're that kind of person. Most people probably, you know, the majority of people didn't. The Northman is a more conventional narrative of Eggers. It's a more, you know, palatable type of film, and it's still very him. And you know, it still didn't do nearly as well as projected, at least in theaters, and it's disappointing.
Do you think, or do you have any inclination that more people going to see movies and spending their expendable income at the movie theater, do you think that more people going to see movies would bring prices down? Or do you think it's one of those capitalist things where like, yeah, that prices are high because studios are having a harder and harder time recouping because budgets are going up and up. And also that it's just like once a certain economy gets used to a certain price for something, it's very rare that it ever comes back down. Very similar to gas prices, where I'm like, I don't know if we're ever going back below $5 ever again. Like, I think that like they bump it up to close to $8 and $8 in some places. They did get it all the way up there, and then we'll be happy if it's $5. You know,
Patrice O'Neill, a comedian that died a while ago, he had a great bit about how people that, you know, the people that set these prices, they bring it up to a certain price, you get acclimated to that price, then they go up infinitely. You know, he made a joke about, you know, shoes and all that. You know how shoes will be $200, then they'll be $500, then they'll be $800, and you'll wish they brought it back to $500. And once they go back to $500, or you know what, you and George Carlin had that same bit of like, you know, you want them to, but it was much more harsher in Carlin's sense, which was, you know, they fuck you in the ass, and then they put 8 inches, and you hope they put 5. You know, and it's like it's very much. It's exactly that. I don't think that there's going to be any universe where it goes back to how it was in so many different aspects.
Yeah, because I remember growing up, and I mean, but obviously this was like in the 90s, and movies were like $5, and then there was the dollar theater too for movies that were on their way out of the theaters. And but I mean, aren't there still theaters that are doing $5 Tuesdays?
Yeah, that's been the one that whenever we would go on a whim, it would be on Tuesdays because tickets were so cheap. And I worked at this summer camp when I was younger, and we would always take the kids on Tuesdays and just see some bullshit.
I think that this subscription model is decent for people who really like to go see movies in the theaters, especially. But it's like, especially right now, where in cities like New York and LA, movie tickets are close to $20 to go see a movie, and it's
IMAX was near $30, and in some cases over.
Yeah, so you might as well just like pay for the monthly cost and then be like, if I go see one movie a month, that's my subscription paid for, I guess. But if I go see 2, I'm getting a deal. If I go see 3 or 4, then it's a pretty good deal, you know. And I don't always make it to. So there's some months that I don't make it to a movie at all. You know, and then there's some months that I see 5 movies, you know. So
that's literally me right now at the Alamo. I've exclusively, I mean, I abuse the Alamo pretty much from January until maybe April of this year, exclusively going to the Alamo, making the way downtown. I didn't mean to sing the lyrics of that fucking song, but and then I got and the Alamo was $29.99 a month. You could see a movie a day. You know what I mean? Which is, you know, I would go like 5 days a week at some point. And AMC is $24.99 for 3 movies a week, which is like still incredible. I mean, it's, you know, it's if you see with how many, I mean, a ticket now, like I think a standard ticket for a regular movie in like 5 o'clock on a Tuesday or on a weekday is like $15, which I don't know. I think that seems to be the most, you know, tame version of it right now.
Yeah. Okay. I think that we've established that you and I like movie theaters. We want more people to go to the movie theaters. We think that people should. I definitely don't want to see movie theaters go. I really don't want a future where all movies are at home. I don't know that will happen. I feel like the movie theater will always be like maybe a niche place for cinephiles and people who like you and me who just, and I still like when I go to the movies, I'm rarely the only person there. And maybe that's because I live in LA and like to me, it's one of the easiest, like get out of the house fun activities that you can do. It's like, it's such a like low stress thing where you're just like, we're just going to go to this place, get snacks and sit down and be told a story for 2 hours, really in increasingly more comfortable chairs. They're doing everything they can to make us more and more comfortable there. You know, there's more and more places like the Alamo where you can get like a full meal brought to your chair, all that stuff. I think more people should go to the movie theaters. We've got a little bit more time here to talk though. I want to go into like a spoiler zone of the podcast. So anybody who doesn't want to hear spoilers, I want to talk about a few movies that have come out and just get into a few details and talk about our favorite things about some of the bigger movies that have come out this year. Starting with Jordan Peele's Nope.
You saw it?
I saw it and you saw it. And if anybody hasn't seen it yet, you can go see it and then come back to this part. But I want to talk a little bit about just some stuff that's in that movie. So that's another movie that's about filmmaking and sort of a love letter to the people behind the scenes and the people that make movies happen, and also sort of an indictment of the way that show business exploits people and can and exploits animals and sort of does anything to get the shot, to the spectacle of it all. What were your thoughts on Nope?
I was lucky enough to see it in IMAX. The theater was packed, which is, you know, a great sight, and I fucking loved it. I adored it. I'm very excited about Peele's sense of original writing, and I think it's very special to see something like this be received well and have a great, you know, opening weekend. I did not expect it to be as much about entertainment and movie making as it was, and I think that, you know, we're getting more movies like that lately, where it's like this is a, you know, Tarantino and all that, the love letter to movie making or to Los Angeles or whatever, you know, the Hollywood. And this is one of those movies where it's like it's both like a love letter and what are those ransom notes that are written with magazine letters? Very much, you know what I mean? It's like I don't think anyone walked out of this movie being like, Hollywood's gonna be okay. You know what I mean? I think there was a sentiment in that, like, you know, people, if you don't lean into sensationalism, and if you know, not to quote a mediocre movie from last year that was nominated for Best Picture, if you don't look up at the, you know what I mean, at the insane thing happening just because it's happening, you know, it's so many cross like, you know, themes for this movie, whether it's relating to the treatment of, you know, quote unquote animals, but by animals we all clearly know it's like the not, you know, rich white actress on set, you know what I mean? It's very much like the people who are just the token characters, which it's not a coincidence that, you know, OJ's dad gets killed by a quarter, a token, you know, it's like, it's Peele knows what he's. That's what my favorite thing about it. He knows
not a
what he's doing.
coincidence that the giant thing in the sky, which we can say because we said spoiler warning, which we can say is not a UFO, but well, it is. I mean, it's an unidentified flying object.
Yeah,
but it's not a spacecraft. It is an animal. It is it's some kind of alien beast that is in the sky that it's not a coincidence that it's white.
Yeah,
and that it also seems to be made of like white flowing material, almost like it's draped in white sheets.
And when it's eating, when you see its mouth open, it looks like a camera lens's, and it's very it's literally the industry. It's the embodiment of like sensationalism and entertainment is the food. And at some point, I mean, especially now with the way digital media is, we pay for that kind of stuff through our views and our claps and that kind of the way that it's received.
Yeah, one of my favorite sequences in the movie. Patrick Kennedy just asked, "What are they talking about?" We're talking about the movie Nope, Patrick, and we're talking spoilers. So if you don't want to hear that, you don't have to be here. But one of my favorite sequences in the movie is early in the film when he goes out in the middle of the night, he goes out to turn the lights off in the stable, and then they get turned back on and he goes back. I love this sequence so much because it does two things simultaneously that I've seen more and more horror directors doing recently, that I really like the melding of these two things. There's this idea that like this Hitchcockian idea of like your imagination can create way more scarier things than the filmmaker can by showing it to you. So there's a lot of like letting you imagine what's going on without seeing it, that filmmakers do. But lately there's been this sort of mixed tactic of showing you something directly, letting you look right at something, but lighting it in a way and filming it in a way from a perspective where you're not quite sure what you're looking at, but you think you know exactly what you're looking at, but you're also like not quite sure. I love this sequence because it's also at that point in the movie, you're not ready for that. You're not ready for like, he goes around the corner and a fucking gray alien stands up, and you're not ready for that yet. You're like, hold on.
Oh yeah. I mean, that immediate reverse shot where it cuts to, and I think that what always terrifies me most, and probably other people, but I'm speaking from my experiences, in human things being inhuman. You know what I mean? Like in movies where if you see someone kind of like crawl weird or something, it's like, or that scene in It where the grandma kind of walks through the road and then she does this fucking thing down the hallway where she goes just out of frame. When the alien is small and it's sort of just in the eye line of like a bale of hair or something, so it kind of blends with the shadow, and then it just starts gradually
and it
getting
stands up very slowly. But it's lit in a way where it doesn't, I mean, its head doesn't look human. No. And so, and you know that from the trailers that you think you're watching an alien movie. So you're like, oh, I guess I thought there was a chance that I would see an alien at some point in this movie, but I didn't think it was going to happen this soon. And I didn't think it was going to look like that. And also, I can't believe he's showing me this. And also, I don't like the way it's moving at all. And then the other one pops its head out from the stable, and you're like, Jesus Christ. And it's like genuinely terrifying. But it's because, again, he's not fully showing you them yet. They're still lit in a way where if you were there, if you were out in the woods or something, or out in a barn at night, and something like that stood up and it was draped in shadow and you couldn't quite tell what it was, but it was moving in a way that made you think that thing's not human, but it looks human. You would shit your pants and run and do exactly what Daniel Kaluuya does and go, nope. And, but like the fact that in that moment, he's simultaneously showing you and also letting your imagination run wild, because you can't see. And it reminds me very much of the shot in Hereditary where the kid wakes up in bed and he's looking out his window, and it's this long shot. It's like a 3-minute long shot. And there's something in the corner of his room, and you can't tell what it is for the longest time, but it's almost like the lens adapts like your eyes would in darkness. And over time, the shot gets slightly lighter, and more and more and more.
Connection problem.
Oh yeah. You just popped out.
Sorry, I think I missed the last like 10 seconds.
Oh, I was saying that it reminds me of that shot in Hereditary where the kid wakes up in bed and there's something in the corner of the room and you can't really tell what it is. And I remember being in the theater and looking at that going, there's something in the corner of his room. I'm sure of it. Or is it just a shadow? I can't tell. And it's lit that way intentionally that you're going, no, there's something like curled up in the corner of his bedroom and up in the top corner, like up in the ceiling. And then eventually all of a sudden the thing moves and you're like, okay, it's a thing. But it's simultaneously letting you look right at it. You're looking right at it, but it's also lit in a way where your imagination has to fill in what you think you're looking at.
It's lit just out of like sight, just so that you're looking into a shadowy corner and you're like, what the fuck is that?
And I think Peele does that in that scene wonderfully, where it's like it's lit just in a way and shot just in a way where you're like trying to get a better look at it, but also you're like, no, what is that? What is that?
So good.
And then the reveal is that it's not actually aliens, but the creepiness of the kid poking his head out.
Oh yeah, I mean the fact that was like a 45-second shot. And for the first 20, 25, there was nothing even peaked.
Nothing.
And then soon as like it's like the slightest like
you're like, and that's one of those experiences too in the movie theater of feeling everyone in the movie theater go, like I felt everyone. I think it's the scariest scene in the movie. And funny enough, it's a total like misdirect.
You want to know when everyone in my theater immediately got like you could hear everyone get uncomfortable?
When?
The first scene when Gordy looks to camera and you don't know that he's looking at Stephen Yeun, and all you see is the chimp go. Sorry, the chimp did not do that.
All you see is the chimp go, Kelly Clarkson.
Sorry, that's my phone. Sorry about that.
That timing was perfect.
No, as I'm turning to, you just see the chimp slowly turn and then just make eye contact with the audience. You know, you don't know that he's looking at Stephen Yeun yet, little Stephen Yeun, which, by the way, probably one of my favorite performances of this movie, just because of how he's collective. You know, like he's like almost like social media. You know, it's very much like, you know, how often do we scroll by like beheadings or awful fucking fires and awful shit happening, shootings and everything awful, and then we go next to the next thing, and it's, you know, a cat video or whatever, and the way he's recalling SNL sketch where Chris Kattan, who played like a caveman chimp type thing on SNL, so I think it's actually really interesting that they found a way to make that seem realistic. Played it, and he was like, "Oh, it was classic. It's so clearly numbed over and just." I don't. It's
and it's also a great commentary on trauma. That's the way that a lot of people experience trauma, is that it becomes later in their life something that they just sort of go like, "Yeah, it was crazy, like it was crazy," but at the time it was not funny or cool at all.
Yeah,
it was horrifying.
Another thing that also just made that Gordy sequence throw me off completely was there's no aliens involved in that, as far as we know, and yet there was still that fucking boot, that foot, shoe that was still on its end like that.
Yeah,
standing up.
Yeah,
that's such a great visual, you know, tick to add to something to make your audience go, I don't like what's happening. Like clearly the chimp got you know, freaked out and killed a bunch of people and ate this poor girl's face, and now are aliens involved in this too, or is it just a fucking oddity that just happened because the way that chimp hit her made her shoe fly off and land perfectly like that? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Freaked me the fuck out.
Yeah, his who would have thought, man? Who would have thought that the guy from Mad TV and Key and Peele would become one of like maybe the top 5 directors in the game in Hollywood, where like he's now one of those people that the next Jordan Peele project is hotly anticipated, and you know, like he's sort of having like that Shyamalan moment where like he's 3 for 3 right now and everyone's really excited. I hope he can maintain it. I'm a big fan and I'll be pulling for him, but it's one of those things where I'm like, it's also like the audience is starting to expect certain things from him there. And you're already seeing it where people are like, I didn't really think that the social commentary was as strong in this one. And it's like, well, remember, he doesn't actually owe you any like specific social commentary. It is in this movie. It's definitely in there. It's put it. That's sort of what he makes movies about, is like, expressing the experience of being part of a marginalized community through the lens of a horror film. But if he chooses at some point that he doesn't want to do that and he wants to just make a different kind of movie, he can do that. And that's what happened with Shyamalan, is people were like, well, what's the twist going to be? That's what we're all coming to see, is like, what's the twist? And it's like, he doesn't, and he sort of, I think, got sucked into it too, where he was like, well, I have to do it. It's like, you don't, dude. You don't. You don't actually have to do that. Like, but it became what people wanted from him and what people expected. And I hope that doesn't happen with Peele. I hope that he continues to, because I think that these first three are excellent movies.
He's 3 for 3.
Yeah, I think they're excellent. And I think that he keeps stepping it up cinematically and keeps, and it reminds me a lot of Shyamalan, where he increasingly started like flexing more and more, like from a filmmaking standpoint, where like by the time he got to The Village, he was like, I'm making like a beautiful film. Like and like a lot of people have their feelings about The Village and the story and everything like that. But the cinematography from Roger Deakins, no one can complain about. Like no one can complain
but
about.
It's often the stuff that gets left out of critiques of that film.
Right. But that's like Jordan Peele working with Hoyt van Hoytema on this movie, being like, and I'm working with like the top cinematographer in the game right now. One of them, like one of the top 3 cinematographers in the game. And we're making this thing look gorgeous, stunning.
Also, how great is it that a cinematographer was able to tell that the cloud wasn't moving? Because they have an eye for detail like that. I fucking love that. What's Angel looked through 6 months of like footage or whatever and could tell that the camera that the cloud wasn't moving, and then the cinematographer gets on, he's like, something's wrong, that thing hasn't moved an inch or whatever, and it's just so good. And I love the idea. Even the cinematographer couldn't hold himself back from getting the money shot at what's that hour called?
Magic hour.
Magic hour of the light hitting everything perfectly and risking his life to be like the dream that he could never wake up from, or whatever he called it. It's so good. I have to see it again. I'm going to see it again this coming week.
Yeah, I also really liked, and this is sort of another like ish spoiler thing, but it doesn't have to do anything with the movie. But talking about how Jordan Peele is now one of those directors that everyone's like, what's the next one going to be? And we will wait however long it takes. The fact that, and I don't know if it was like this in your movie theater, but it was like this in my movie theater. They had the trailers for all the other movies. So there's the normal movies that are coming out. Here's this movie, come see this movie. And then they have Nicole Kidman saying, welcome to AMC, doing her thing.
Oh my God,
the Nicole Kidman thing. They said, well, if you're looking forward to those movies and others, get on AMC subs list.
Yeah.
And usually that's when the movie starts, but not when there's a Christopher Nolan movie coming out, because then Christopher Nolan goes, and now here's the trailer for my movie.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's the normal movies that are coming out. Then there's and now welcome to the feature presentation. But then it's like, but the last thing you're going to see before Jordan Peele's movie starts is the teaser trailer for Christopher Nolan's new movie. And I was like, what a flex from Nolan to be like, I go after everyone else.
Absolutely. I think that, that's happened before. It's become like, you're 100% right. The preamble before a movie starts of being like, don't forget this, don't forget that. Sign up for our card. Turn off your phone. Here's Nicole Kidman. Like, it's 100% now. There's a checklist now. Everyone knows exactly, especially if you go to an AMC theater. So there were 10 trailers before Nicole Kidman and that came on for me in my theater. Too fucking many, first off.
Too many. There were a lot. Yeah.
5 to 8. Even 8 is pushing it, but at 8 people are like, okay, finally we're getting into it. And then by the time the Oppenheimer teaser came on, people in my theater were going, oh. Yeah. And I'm like, guys, I know that this is their fault, but this is going to be good too. So pay attention to it. It completely sabotages any momentum. I heard a lot of people going like, I didn't expect the movie to start off like that, where it's like, talking about fucking, J. Robert Oppenheimer. It's like, it's 100% cut off the momentum. And it is absolutely a Christopher Nolan flex to debut a teaser for his black and white movie, star-studded. Like, literally everyone in Hollywood is fucking working on it just after everything before the movie actually starts.
Yeah, for me, there were too many trailers, and I think that
Mhm.
that's just a thing in general. Like I've taken to showing up to the movie theater at the time that the movie starts and
Yeah.
getting all of my concessions while trailers play, because I just like, first of all, I think that trailers these days show too much stuff, and
Mhm.
second of all, I like, usually if I go to the movie so often that like I've seen all of them, so like I don't need
Yeah.
to see them again. But anytime that sin copy thing shows up in a trailer, I get excited. I go,
Mhm.
oh, this is okay. Lean forward. This is something special. I remember going and seeing Hobbs and Shaw in the movie theater because there was nothing else playing. And I was like, well, I'll go see Hobbs and Shaw. And I went to see Hobbs and Shaw, and they had, and I think Chris Nolan just likes this move. They didn't announce to anyone that they were going to be playing a teaser trailer for Tenet. And it was just like completely, and it was like the highlight of the movie for me was the teaser trailer for Tenet. It was. And it was the same thing. They played all the trailers, then they did like the welcome to AMC, blah, 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 blah. And then
Yeah.
before Hobbs and Shaw played, they played the teaser trailer for Tenet. And everyone in the theater was like, oh my God, and then afterward I checked Twitter, and Twitter was like, apparently like 20 theaters in LA got a sneak preview of Christopher
Jesus.
Nolan's movie. And it was just a thing that like they just did as like a stunt. And I happened to be there
That's
for
so cool.
one of us. I was so, and this was like a year and a half before Tenet came out.
Yeah.
But I think that that's pretty cool when one of our biggest filmmakers working right now, maybe the biggest filmmaker in the game right now,
Probably.
remains committed to releasing his films in theaters and honoring that institution and doing fun things like that, where he's like, I'm not releasing this online. I'm not putting this.
Your camera cut out for me.
Oh man, I knew that was gonna happen. I knew my battery was gonna die. Oh no. So that's what I gotta fix is I gotta fix I gotta get a full time external battery hookup.
Yeah.
I think that's a good cue that we should cut it off though.
Yeah, probably.
So thanks for popping on, Tim. Where can people follow you?
You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Comedian in the Cinema, or you can check out my podcast, How's It Going to End, on YouTube at Comedian in the Cinema, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Thanks for jumping on with me again on short notice. Always love having you on, and always love chatting with you about this stuff. I'll talk to you soon.
See you, man.
Okay, see you later.